In a jaw-dropping display of power that sent shockwaves of terror rippling across the galaxy, Earth unveiled its long-hidden superweapon, the gargantuan supercarrier USS Blackstar, a 2.5-kilometer-long harbinger of humanity's unyielding defiance against the tyrannical Galactic Empire. Captain Sean Parker, a grizzled 35-year-old veteran of the United Terran Federation, stood on the bridge of the mighty vessel, his eyes fixed on the urgent message flickering across the screen. The words that scrolled before him confirmed his worst fears. The Jem'Hadar, the Empire's most brutal and technologically advanced enforcers, had discovered humanity's existence and declared total war. Sean clenched his fists, knowing that the Blackstar, with its cutting-edge weaponry, impenetrable stealth technology, and squadron of 500 swift fighter craft, represented Earth's last hope against the merciless onslaught. Suddenly, klaxons blared throughout the ship, red lights pulsing in warning. Athena, the Blackstar's artificial intelligence, reported with chilling clarity. "Captain, a fleet of 100 Jem'Hadar warships has emerged from hyperspace near Earth." Without hesitation, Sean snapped into action. "Battle stations, prepare to engage the enemy." The bridge crew scrambled to their posts, fingers flying across consoles as they readied the ship's formidable array of weapons. Sean activated the Blackstar's stealth systems, rendering the massive vessel invisible to enemy sensors. He stared out the viewport at the distant specks of the approaching Jem'Hadar armada, his mind racing with strategies to overcome the seemingly insurmountable odds. The fate of humanity, of every man, woman, and child on Earth, now rested squarely on his shoulders. Failure was not an option. Earth would live or die based on his actions in the coming battle. As the Jem'Hadar fleet drew closer, Sean's grip tightened on the armrest of his command chair, his knuckles turning white from the intensity of his resolve. This was it, the moment of truth. The Blackstar would either triumph against the Galactic Empire's forces, or humanity would be swiftly crushed under the heel of alien oppression. The battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, and Sean swore to fight until his last breath to protect his homeworld and his people. The Blackstar's powerful engines roared to life, propelling the massive supercarrier through space towards the waiting Jem'Hadar armada. On the bridge, Captain Sean Parker sat with rapt attention as a video transmission flickered to life on the main view screen. The image resolved into the menacing visage of Emperor Xenos, a towering reptilian humanoid with piercing red eyes that seemed to bore into Sean's very soul. "Captain Parker," Xenos hissed, his voice dripping with disdain, "I offer you one chance to surrender. The Jem'Hadar have already crushed a dozen species who dared to resist us. Your pitiful human race will fare no better. Lay down your arms, and your deaths will be swift and painless." Sean's hand squeezed the armrest of his chair, his knuckles going white. He met the Emperor's gaze, unflinching. "We'll never surrender to you, Xenos. Earth will fight to the last man to preserve our freedom." Xenos let out a harsh bark of laughter. "Then you have sealed your fate, human." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Captain," Athena's voice cut through the quiet, laced with urgency, "I'm detecting a massive energy surge from the Jem'Hadar flagship. It appears to be a dreadnought, 5 kilometers in length." Sean's blood ran cold as he watched the sensor readings climb higher and higher. What kind of weapon could generate that much power? "Analysis indicates it is a planet killer, sir. If that thing fires on Earth, it will wipe out all life on the surface in a matter of seconds." Sean took a deep breath, his mind racing. They had to take out that weapon, and fast. He punched a button on his console, opening a channel to the hangar bay. "Maverick, you there?" "Loud and clear, Captain," came the reply, the voice of his best friend and Wing Commander Jack Maverick Wilson crackling over the comm. "Roger that, Sean. We'll give 'em hell." The channel clicked off as Maverick mobilized the pilots. Sean turned to his helmsman. "Bring us about full speed. We're going to hit that dreadnought with everything we've got." The Blackstar banked hard, engines flaring as it accelerated towards the enemy flagship. In the distance, Hundreds of fighter craft swarmed from the Supercarrier's hangar, streaking towards the Jem'Hadar fleet like angry hornets. As the fighters clashed with the enemy defenses in a dazzling display of lasers and explosions, Sean focused on the looming bulk of the dreadnought. The Blackstar's weapon systems hummed to life, railguns and plasma torpedoes primed and ready. "Fire on my mark," Sean commanded, his eyes locked on the targeting reticle. The dreadnought grew larger and larger in the viewport until it filled the screen. "Mark!" The Blackstar shuddered as it unleashed a devastating barrage, railgun rounds and plasma torpedoes screaming through the void to slam into the dreadnought's hull. A massive explosion blossomed from the impact site, debris spinning away into space. But even as the smoke cleared, Athena's sensors showed the planet-killer weapon still intact, its energy levels climbing steadily towards critical mass. Sean gritted his teeth as he watched the energy readings from the planet-killer weapon continue to climb. The Blackstar's weapons had barely made a dent in the dreadnought's armor. There was only one option left. "Alex, Mike, suit up," Sean barked into the comm. "We're going in." "It's the only way. That weapon will fire in minutes. We have to take it out from the inside." Alex and Mike joined Sean in the hangar bay, their faces grim but determined. They boarded the stealth shuttle, a sleek black craft bristling with advanced tech. As the shuttle launched from the Blackstar, Sean watched the battle raging outside. UTF fighters danced and wove through the Jem'Hadar ships, lasers and missiles flashing in the void. The shuttle's cloak engaged, and they slipped unseen past the enemy's defenses. Sean guided the craft towards the dreadnought's hull, searching for the maintenance hatch Athena had identified. There, a small opening, barely large enough for the shuttle. Sean maneuvered them closer, the shuttle shuddering as it scraped against the edges of the hatch. With a jolt, they landed inside the dreadnought. Sean, Alex, and Mike grabbed their weapons and moved out, scanning for threats. The corridor was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant thrum of the ship's engines. Suddenly, a group of Jem'Hadar warriors rounded the corner, their weapons raised. Sean and his team reacted instantly, diving for cover as the aliens opened fire. Lasers sizzled through the air, scorching the walls. Sean popped out from behind a bulkhead and squeezed off a burst from his rifle, dropping two of the warriors. Alex and Mike laid down covering fire as Sean advanced, his movements quick and precise. He took out another warrior with a well-placed shot, then charged forward, slamming his rifle butt into the last one's face. The alien crumpled to the floor, and Sean motioned for his team to move on. They fought their way through the ship, corridor by corridor, their weapons flashing in the dim light. The Jem'Hadar resistance was fierce, but Sean and his team were relentless. As they neared the control room, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking their path. It was Kazarak, Xenos' right hand. The alien was a monstrosity of cybernetic enhancements, his body a fusion of flesh and metal. He glared at Sean with glowing red eyes, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "You've come far, human," Kazarak growled, "but this is where your pathetic resistance ends." Sean stepped forward, his grip tightening on his rifle. "We'll see about that." The two warriors collided in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, fists and feet flying in a deadly blur. Kazarak was strong, his cybernetic enhancements giving him an edge, but Sean was faster. He ducked under a punch and drove his knee into the alien's gut, forcing him back. Kazarak snarled and lunged again, but Sean was ready. He sidestepped the charge and brought his rifle down hard on the alien's skull. There was a sickening crack, and Kazarak crashed to the floor, his cybernetic limbs twitching. Sean turned to his team, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Let's finish this." Together, they burst into the control room, weapons raised and ready to sabotage the planet killer once and for all. As Sean and his team burst through the control room doors, weapons at the ready, they skidded to an abrupt halt. Emperor Xenos himself stood before them, a cruel smirk twisting his reptilian features. A force of heavily armed Jem'Hadar elite guards flanked him, their energy rifles trained on the humans. "Captain Parker," Xenos hissed, his voice dripping with malice, "did you really think you could catch me unaware? I've been expecting you." With a flick of his wrist, Xenos activated a force field, trapping Sean and his team inside the room. The shimmering energy barrier hummed menacingly, blocking any hope of escape. Xenos began to pace, his eyes glinting with malevolent glee. "You humans always so predictable, so arrogant, thinking you can stand against the might of the Jem'Hadar." As the Emperor launched into a tirade about the Jem'Hadar's genetic superiority and their divine right to subjugate all lesser species, Sean caught Lieutenant Commander Chen's eye. With a discreet hand signal, he conveyed his plan. Chen, who had slipped away during the chaos of the battle with Khazrak, nodded almost imperceptibly. His fingers danced over his wrist, activating the neural interface disguised as a standard-issue UTF implant. While Xenos continued his monologue, too consumed by his own grandstanding to notice the subtle movements, Chen worked feverishly to hack into the dreadnought's systems. His brow furrowed in concentration as he navigated the complex network of security protocols and firewalls. Sweat beaded on Chen's forehead as he fought to maintain his composure, knowing that every second counted. Xenos's voice droned on, expounding on the inevitable downfall of humanity and the rise of the Jem'Hadar Empire. Just as Xenos reached the crescendo of his speech, Chen's eyes widened in triumph. With a final tap on his interface, he sent a surge of power through the ship's systems. The force field flickered and died, and a split second later, a massive explosion rocked the dreadnought. Alarms blared as the planet killer's power core overloaded, setting off a chain reaction that tore through the vessel. Xenos stumbled, his eyes wide with shock and rage. "What have you done?" he roared. Sean and his team wasted no time. They opened fire on the Jem'Hadar guards, their advanced weapons cutting through the alien's armor like it was made of paper. The room erupted into a fierce firefight, energy beams crisscrossing the air. Xenos, seeing his plan unraveling before his eyes, turned to flee. Sean caught a glimpse of the Emperor's retreating back and sprinted after him, dodging enemy fire and leaping over fallen bodies. The dreadnought shuddered and groaned around them, the metal walls buckling as secondary explosions tore through the ship. Sean raced through the crumbling corridors, his heart pounding in his ears as he pursued Xenos. He finally cornered the Emperor in the hangar bay, the once pristine space now a chaos of twisted metal and sparking wires. Xenos spun to face him, his eyes burning with hatred. "It's over, Xenos," Sean panted, his rifle leveled at the Emperor's chest. "Surrender now and I'll spare your life." Xenos let out a mirthless laugh, his voice echoing in the cavernous hangar. "Spare my life? You think you've won, human?" The two leaders stood frozen, locked in a tense standoff as the dreadnought disintegrated around them. The fate of Earth, of the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The wail of the dreadnought's alarms filled Sean's ears as he faced off against Xenos in the hangar bay. The deck shook beneath their feet, the ship coming apart at the seams. Suddenly, the roar of engines cut through the chaos as a Jem'Hadar transport ship descended into the hangar, its landing ramp lowering to reveal a squad of heavily armed soldiers. Xenos lunged at Sean, his reptilian eyes blazing with fury. They clashed in a flurry of blows, fists and feet striking with brutal precision. Sean ducked under a punch and drove his elbow into Xenos's gut, but the Emperor barely flinched, his scaly hide absorbing the impact. "You think you've won, human?" Xenos snarled, his forked tongue flicking out between his teeth. "The Jem'Hadar have been studying your pathetic species for decades. We've developed a bioweapon, a virus that targets human DNA specifically. Even if you destroy this fleet, we will unleash it upon your world, and your kind will be wiped from the face of the galaxy." Sean's blood boiled at the revelation, rage coursing through his veins. He redoubled his efforts, his fists flying in a relentless barrage. Xenos staggered back under the onslaught, his defenses crumbling. With a final, devastating blow, Sean sent the Emperor crashing to the deck. He pounced on Xenos, pinning him down with his knee. Sean raised his fist, ready to end the tyrant's life once and for all. But Xenos merely smiled, a cruel, twisted thing. His hand darted to his belt, and before Sean could react, the Emperor vanished in a blinding flash of light. Sean whirled around to see Xenos rematerialize on the ramp of the waiting transport ship. The engines roared to life as the ship began to lift off, Xenos' mocking laughter echoing in Sean's ears. He couldn't let the Emperor escape, not with the knowledge of the bioweapon that could doom humanity. Sean's gaze fell on a discarded pulse grenade, lying amidst the wreckage of the hangar. He snatched it up and sprinted towards the rising transport ship, his heart pounding in his chest. With a mighty heave, Sean hurled the grenade at the ship's hull, praying it would find its mark. The grenade detonated in a blinding flash of light, the electromagnetic pulse frying the ship's systems. It listed to the side, smoke pouring from its engines, and crashed back into the hangar in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Sean dove for cover as debris rained down around him. He spotted a Jem'Hadar fighter, miraculously intact amidst the carnage. With a final glance at the wreckage of the transport ship, Sean leapt into the fighter's cockpit and fired up the engines. He rocketed out of the hangar, weaving through the dreadnought's crumbling superstructure. Explosions blossomed in his wake as the mighty ship tore itself apart, consumed by the overloading planet killer. Sean's calm crackled to life, and he heard the welcome sound of Alex's voice. "Sean, we see you. Head for the stealth shuttle. We're pulling alongside." With expert precision, Sean maneuvered the fighter into the shuttle's waiting airlock. The moment the pressures equalized, he leapt from the cockpit and dashed into the main cabin, where his team waited, their faces etched with relief. As the shuttle sped away from the dying dreadnought, Sean opened a channel to the Blackstar. "Commander Thompson, this is Captain Parker. The dreadnought is destroyed, but we have a new problem. Xenos escaped, and he revealed that the Jem'Hadar have developed a bioweapon designed to wipe out humanity. We need to find him and stop this weapon before it's too late." Sarah's voice came back over the comm, steady and determined. "Understood, Captain. Return to the Blackstar immediately. We'll begin working on a plan to track down Xenos and neutralize this threat." Sean leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. As long as Xenos remained at large and the bioweapon existed, humanity's fate hung in the balance. He glanced around at his team, their expressions mirroring his own grim determination. Together they would hunt down the Emperor and put an end to the Jem'Hadar's plan, no matter the cost. Back on the Blackstar, Sean and his crew pored over the data they had managed to extract from the Jem'Hadar dreadnought systems. Lines of code scrolled across the screens, the harsh light of the terminals casting deep shadows on the exhausted faces of the bridge crew. "There," Chen said, pointing to a string of coordinates. "That's where the bioweapon is being developed, a secret research facility on a planet called Nox Prime." Sean leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the information. "How long until the weapon is operational?" "Based on these progress reports, they're close, very close. We have to destroy that facility before they can complete it." Sean nodded grimly. "Helm, set a course for Nox Prime. We're going to put an end to this once and for all." The Blackstar leapt into hyperspace, the stars stretching into blurred lines as the mighty ship hurtled towards its destination. But as they dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the Nox system, alarms blared throughout the bridge. "Captain, sensors are picking up multiple Jem'Hadar ships on an intercept course," Sarah called out, her fingers flying across her console. "They're being led by a massive battle cruiser, at least twice the size of the Blackstar." Sean gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles turning white. "Xenos must have warned them we were coming. Battle stations now." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew rushed to their posts. The Blackstar's fighter squadrons launched from the hangar bays, streaking out to meet the incoming Jem'Hadar ships. Explosions bloomed in the void as the two forces clashed, lasers and missiles crisscrossing the battlefield. The Blackstar shuddered as a barrage of plasma torpedoes slammed into its shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the acrid stench of burnt circuitry filled the air. "Shields down to 30%, Chen shouted over the din of battle. "The stealth generator is offline and the main weapon is out of commission." Security feeds popped up on the main view screen, showing a group of heavily armed Jem'Hadar warriors, led by a vicious-looking alien with a scar running down his face, storming through the corridors of the Blackstar. The sounds of battle soon echoed through the halls of the Blackstar. the crack of gunfire, and the sizzle of energy weapons mingling with the screams of the dying. Sean and his crew fought desperately to push back the invaders, but the Jem'Hadar were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Suddenly the ship lurched, the deck plating buckling beneath their feet. "What the hell was that?" Sean demanded, struggling to keep his balance. "Sir, someone has sabotaged the engines," Sarah reported, her voice laced with disbelief. "We're dead in the water." Then cold realization washed over Sean as he watched more Jem'Hadar warriors flood onto the ship. There was a traitor among them, someone who had betrayed the Blackstar from within. The doors to the bridge hissed open, and Commander Nakamura strode in, a cruel smile on his face. In his hand he held a Jem'Hadar plasma rifle, its barrel trained on Sean's chest. "Nakamura," Sean whispered, his eyes wide with shock. "You're one of them." "I've always been one of them, Captain," Nakamura sneered, his features twisting into a mask of hatred. "A sleeper agent, planted years ago to bring about the downfall of humanity." The bridge crew stood frozen, their weapons trained on Nakamura but unable to fire for fear of hitting Sean. The tension in the air was palpable, the fate of the Blackstar hanging in the balance. With a roar of fury, Sean lunged at Nakamura, knocking the rifle from his hands. The two men grappled on the deck, trading blows with a savagery born of desperation and betrayal. Around them the crew fought on, repelling the Jem'Hadar boarders with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed. But the enemy kept coming, wave after wave, as the Blackstar drifted helplessly in space, its systems crippled and its defenders dwindling. Sean and Nakamura rolled across the floor, their fight taking them perilously close to the shattered viewport. Beyond the fractured glass, the battle raged on, the fate of humanity balanced on a razor's edge. With a primal roar, Sean slammed Nakamura into the deck, his fists raining down on the traitor's face in a relentless barrage. Blood splattered across the cold metal, Nakamura's nose shattering under the onslaught. Nakamura spat a mouthful of blood, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you've won, Captain. I've sabotaged the self-destruct. The Blackstar is theirs now." Sean's heart plummeted. Without the self-destruct, they couldn't prevent the Jem'Hadar from capturing the ship and its advanced technology. He slammed Nakamura's head against the deck, knocking him unconscious. Sean leaped to his feet, his mind racing. "All hands abandon ship," he barked into his wrist communicator. "Get to the escape pods." He sprinted through the corridors, the sound of Jem'Hadar energy weapons growing louder with each passing second. Rounding a corner, he nearly collided with Chen, who was clutching a plasma rifle, his face streaked with soot and blood. "Not yet, Captain. Listen, I managed to hack into the battlecruiser's systems. Their shield generator has a weakness, a flaw in the cooling system." Sean's eyes widened. "If we can exploit that weakness, we might have a chance." Chen nodded grimly. "I have a plan, but it's risky. We need to lure the battlecruiser closer, make them think the Blackstar is a prize to be captured. And then strike when their guard is down," Sean finished, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "Let's do it." "I need you all to get to the escape pods," he said, his voice steady. "Chen, Maverick and I will stay behind. See this through to the end." The volunteers hesitated, loyalty warring with the instinct for survival. But one by one they nodded, clasping Sean's hand in a final show of respect before sprinting for the pods. Sean, Chen and Maverick climbed into the captured Jem'Hadar fighters, their hands flying over the unfamiliar controls. With a roar of engines, they blasted out of the hangar, the Blackstar looming behind them like a wounded leviathan. "Divert all remaining power to the engines and life support," Sean ordered, his voice crackling over the comms. "Make it look like we're dead in the water." The Blackstar shuddered, its lights flickering and dying as the power drained away. The battlecruiser loomed closer, its massive bulk blotting out the stars. The battlecruiser was nearly on top of them now, its tractor beam reaching out to snare the Blackstar. Sean's heart hammered in his chest, sweat beading on his brow. The fighters surged forward, their weapons blazing. They arrowed straight for the shield generator, the pulsing heart of the battlecruiser's defenses. Plasma bolts slammed into the generator, exploiting the critical weakness Chen had discovered. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a blinding flash, the generator exploded, the shockwave rippling across the battlecruiser's hull. Its shields flickered and died, leaving it vulnerable. "Hit it with everything we've got," Sean roared, yanking his fighter into a sharp turn. The Blackstar's remaining weapons opened fire, missiles and railgun rounds tearing into the battlecruiser's exposed hull. Explosions blossomed across its surface, the once mighty ship disintegrating under the onslaught. "Sean, the self-destruct," Chen shouted, his voice tight with urgency. "You have to activate it manually." Sean gritted his teeth, his fighter racing back towards the Blackstar's hangar. He leaped from the cockpit before the ship had even touched down, sprinting for the bridge. His lungs burned, his muscles screaming in protest, but he pushed himself harder, faster. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," Athena's voice echoed through the ship. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Sean raced back to the hangar, leaping into the Jem'Hadar fighter. Chen and Maverick were already waiting, their faces pale but determined. They rocketed away from the Blackstar, the battlecruiser looming behind them, still spewing flames and debris. The seconds ticked down, each one an eternity. With a blinding flash, the Blackstar exploded, a miniature sun blooming in the void. The shockwave slammed into the battlecruiser, tearing it apart in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. The remaining Jem'Hadar ships, caught in the blast, crumpled like tin cans, their hulls shattering into a million glittering fragments. Sean and his team watched in silence, their faces bathed in the afterglow of the explosion. The Blackstar was gone, but they had struck a blow against the Jem'Hadar, had shown them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Battered and weary, they limped their fighter towards a nearby UTF outpost, the remnants of the Blackstar's crew waiting for them. There was no cheering, no celebration, only a grim determination, a steely resolve to finish what they had started. As they stepped onto the outpost's hangar deck, Sean gathered his people around him, his eyes hard as flint. "The Blackstar may be gone, but our mission is not over. The Jem'Hadar still have that bioweapon, still threaten our very existence. We'll regroup, resupply, and then we'll hunt them down. We'll stop that weapon, and we'll make them pay for every life they've taken. This fight is far from over." His crew nodded, their faces set with the same fierce determination. They had lost friends, lost their ship, but they had not lost hope. As long as even one of them still drew breath, they would fight on, would stand against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. In the depths of space, a new chapter was about to begin, a story of resilience, of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The crew of the Blackstar, beaten but unbroken, prepared to write the next verse in the saga of humanity's struggle for survival. The battered UTF shuttle touched down on the landing pad of the outpost, its engines whining as they powered down. Sean stepped out into the harsh, artificial light, his eyes adjusting from the dimness of the cockpit. Around him, the surviving crew of the Blackstar disembarked, their faces haggard and haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Admiral Ivanova strode forward, her greying hair pulled back in a severe bun, her uniform crisp despite the chaos of the last few hours. She clasped Sean's hand, her grip firm. "Captain Parker, I'm relieved to see you and your crew safe." Sean nodded, his jaw tight. "Thank you, Admiral, but we have no time to waste. The Jem'Hadar—" "I know," Ivanova cut in, her voice grave. "They've launched attacks on multiple UTF colonies. Our forces are spread thin, trying to defend them." She led Sean and his senior officers into the outpost's command center, where a holographic display of the galaxy hovered above the central table. Red markers indicated the locations of the Jem'Hadar attacks, the colonies under siege blinking like angry wounds. "There's more," Ivanova said, zooming the display in on a single planet. "Our intelligence has discovered that the bioweapon research facility is located here, on Nox Prime. It's protected by a powerful energy shield that can only be deactivated from inside the planet's control center." Sean studied the display, his mind racing. A frontal assault would take too long and cost too many lives. They needed to strike fast and hard. "Admiral, I have a plan," he said, looking up at Ivanova. "If we can infiltrate the control center and take down that shield, we can destroy the facility from orbit." Ivanova raised an eyebrow. "Infiltrate? How?" Sean pointed to the captured Jem'Hadar fighters, docked in the outpost's hangar. "We use their own ships against them. A small team, disguised as Jem'Hadar, can slip past their defenses and get inside the control center." "It's risky," Ivanova said, but there was a glint of approval in her eye. "But it might just work. I can spare a squad of UTF Rangers to accompany you." Sean nodded, already mentally assembling his team. Chen and Maverick, of course. They had been through hell together, and there was no one he trusted more. As they geared up, fitting themselves with captured Jem'Hadar armor and weapons, a chime sounded from the command center's comm system. Ivanova frowned, tapping the controls. A holoscreen flickered to life, and Sean felt his blood run cold. Emperor Xenos, his face a twisted mass of scar tissue, leered down at them. "Captain Parker," he rasped, his voice like gravel, "you have fought well, but your struggle is futile." Sean stepped forward, his fists clenched. "We will never surrender to you, Xenos." He leaned closer, his ruined face filling the screen. "I have already begun deploying the bioweapon on your pathetic colonies. Even now your people are dying, their bodies ravaged by a virus that adapts and evolves faster than you can hope to combat it." Sean felt a cold knot of fear in his gut, but he kept his face impassive. He would not give Xenos the satisfaction of seeing him flinch. "You have 48 hours, Captain," Xenos said, his voice dripping with malice. 48 hours to lay down your arms and accept your extinction. If you do not, I will unleash the full might of the bioweapon, and your species will be nothing more than a memory." The screen went dark, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Sean looked around at his team, saw the fear and anger in their eyes, but beneath that he saw something else, something that gave him hope. Determination, resolve, a fierce, unbreakable will to fight to the very last breath. "You heard the man," Sean said, his voice ringing with authority. "We have 48 hours to stop this bioweapon, 48 hours to save our people, and we will not fail." He strode towards the hangar, his team falling into step behind him. They boarded the captured fighters, the Jem'Hadar armor feeling alien and heavy on their bodies. As they lifted off, Sean looked out at the stars, at the vast expanse of the galaxy. Out there, billions of lives hung in the balance, lives that he had sworn to protect. He would not let them down. He would not let Xenos win. Even if it cost him his own life, he would see this mission through to the end. The fighters streaked towards Nox Prime, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. In the lead ship, Sean sat at the controls, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The planet grew larger in the view screen, a mottled green and brown orb, shrouded in wispy clouds. Sean guided the fighter down towards the surface, the other ships close behind. As they entered the atmosphere, the sky outside the cockpit ignited, flames licking at the edges of the craft. Sean gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the ship steady. They burst through the cloud cover, the landscape of Nox Prime spreading out beneath them. Vast forests stretched to the horizon, broken by jagged mountain ranges and winding rivers. Sean brought the fighter down in a clearing near the control center, the other ships landing in formation around him. He climbed out of the cockpit, the Jem'Hadar armor feeling heavy and cumbersome. Chen and Maverick joined him, their faces obscured by the alien helmets. Behind them, the UTF Rangers fanned out, their weapons at the ready. Sean led the way towards the control center, a squat, fortified building nestled in the shadow of a towering cliff. Jem'Hadar guards patrolled the perimeter, their energy rifles glinting in the sun. He strode forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The guards looked up, their eyes narrowing as they saw the approaching warriors. Sean held his breath, praying that their disguises would hold. He had to resist the urge to reach for his weapon, to start shooting. But the guards merely nodded, stepping aside to let them pass. Sean exhaled slowly, relief flooding through him. They were in. Now the real work began. Sean and his team moved quickly through the corridors of the control center, their footsteps echoing on the metal floors. They passed other Jem'Hadar warriors, but none challenged them, fooled by their disguises. They reached the central control room, a vast chamber dominated by a holographic display of Nox Prime. Sean scanned the room, his eyes falling on the energy shield controls. Chen nodded, moving to the console. His fingers flew over the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and a harsh voice boomed over the intercom. "Intruder alert! Humans have infiltrated the control center." Sean cursed, realizing their disguises had been penetrated. He ripped off his helmet, drawing his weapon. "Chen, how long?" he barked as Maverick and the Rangers took up defensive positions around the room. "I need a few more minutes," Chen replied, his voice tense. The doors to the control room burst open, and Jem'Hadar warriors poured in, their weapons blazing. Sean and his team returned fire, the room erupting into a cacophony of energy blasts and explosions. Sean ducked behind a console, popping up to fire off a quick burst. A Jem'Hadar warrior fell, his chest smoking. But more kept coming, a seemingly endless tide of enemies. "Chen!" Sean shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Almost there," Chen replied, his fingers a blur on the controls. A plasma bolt sizzled past Sean's head, close enough to singe his hair. He returned fire, taking down another warrior. And then, with a triumphant shout, Chen slammed his hand down on the final control. The holographic display flickered, and the shimmering dome of the energy shield blinked out of existence. "Shield is down," Chen reported, a fierce grin on his face. Sean activated his comm, his voice ringing with urgency. "Admiral Ivanova, the shield is down. Commence orbital bombardment." High above Nox Prime, the UTF fleet moved into position. Massive cannons swiveled, locking onto the coordinates of the bioweapon facility. With a blinding flash, the cannons fired, streaks of light arcing down towards the planet's surface. The facility exploded in a massive fireball, the shockwave rippling out for miles. In the control room, Sean and his team watched the destruction on the holographic display. The Jem'Hadar warriors forgotten for a moment. But their victory was short-lived. A new wave of enemies surged into the room, their weapons spitting fire. Sean and his team fought with renewed ferocity, determined to hold their ground. But they were outnumbered, outgunned. One by one, the UTF Rangers fell, their bodies littering the floor. Chen took a blast to the chest, crumpling to the ground. Sean and Maverick fought back to back, their weapons blazing. But it was a losing battle. They were being overwhelmed. Just as all seemed lost, a massive explosion rocked the control center. The Jem'Hadar warriors were thrown off their feet. The room plunged into darkness. Sean looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief. There, hovering outside the window, was a UTF dropship, its weapons still smoking. The ship's ramp lowered, and a squad of UTF Marines poured out, their weapons at the ready. They quickly secured the room, dispatching the remaining Jem'Hadar warriors. Sean helped Maverick to his feet, his heart heavy with the loss of Chen and the Rangers. But there was no time to mourn. They had to get off this planet, had to regroup and plan their next move. As they boarded the dropship, Sean looked out at the smoldering ruins of the bioweapon facility. They had struck a blow against the Jem'Hadar, but the war was far from over. Emperor Xenos was still out there, and he would not rest until humanity was wiped from the face of the galaxy. But Sean and his allies would not rest either. They would fight until their last breath to protect their people and their way of life. The dropship lifted off, carrying them up through the atmosphere and back into the waiting arms of the UTF fleet. And as they broke free of Nox Prime's gravity, Sean felt a renewed sense of purpose, a steely determination to see this fight through to the end, no matter the cost. Sean and his team burst into the control center, weapons drawn only to be met by a chilling sight. The room was bathed in an eerie blue glow, emanating from a massive holographic display that dominated the far wall. In the center of the room stood a sleek, black console, its surface adorned with a dizzying array of buttons and screens. Chen rushed to the console, his fingers flying over the controls as he attempted to hack into the system. "The energy shield isn't the only thing protecting this place," he said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There's a highly advanced AI in control, and it's not going to let us in without a fight." Suddenly the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor outside, followed by the unmistakable whine of Jem'Hadar energy weapons. "Incoming!" Sean shouted, taking cover behind a reinforced pillar. The room erupted into chaos as a squad of Jem'Hadar warriors stormed in, their weapons spitting deadly bolts of energy. Sean and the UTF Rangers returned fire, the air thick with the acrid scent of ozone and burned flesh. Maverick, his face a mask of grim determination, charged forward, drawing the enemy's fire away from Chen. He moved with a fluid grace, his weapon barking as he cut down one warrior after another. But the Jem'Hadar kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. A bolt of energy caught Maverick in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the floor. Sean's heart leaped into his throat as he saw his friend fall. He made a move to rush to Maverick's side, but the wounded pilot waved him off. "No!" Maverick gasped, his face contorted in pain. "Don't worry about me. You have to help Chen shut down that AI." With a final nod to his fallen comrade, Sean turned back to the battle, his weapon blazing as he fought his way towards the console. Chen worked feverishly, his fingers a blur as he battled against the AI's defenses. Maverick, despite his wound, dragged himself to a defensive position, his weapon still clutched in his hand. He fired shot after shot, each one finding its mark in a Jem'Hadar warrior's chest or head. But the enemy's numbers were too great, and Maverick's strength was fading fast. As a fresh wave of warriors poured into the room, Maverick locked eyes with Sean, a silent message passing between them. With a final defiant roar, Maverick surged to his feet, charging directly into the oncoming Jem'Hadar. His weapon blazed, cutting down the aliens like wheat before a scythe. The warriors turned their attention to Maverick, their weapons tearing into him from all sides. But even as he fell, his body riddled with energy bolts, Maverick kept fighting, buying precious seconds for Chen to complete his work. With a triumphant shout, Chen finally broke through the AI's defenses, his fingers flying over the console as he input the final commands. The holographic display flickered and died, and the low hum of the energy shield faded into silence. But there was no time to celebrate. A deep, menacing laugh echoed through the room, and Sean spun to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was Kazrak, his body a twisted fusion of flesh and metal. His eyes glowed with a malevolent red light, and in his hand he held a pulsing energy weapon of unfamiliar design. "Oh, you think you've won, human?" Kazrak sneered, his voice a grating metallic rasp. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The Jem'Hadar will prevail, and your pathetic species will be ground beneath our heel." Sean raised his weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Not while I still draw breath," he growled. The two warriors clashed in a blaze of energy and sparks, their weapons locked in a deadly dance. Kazrak was strong, his cybernetic enhancements giving him an edge, but Sean was quick and agile, using his smaller size to his advantage. As they fought, Kazrak ranted about the superiority of the Jem'Hadar, his words laced with a fanatical zeal. "You cannot stop us," he snarled, his blade slicing through the air. "We are the future, the next step in evolution. All other species are nothing more than cattle, fit only to serve or be slaughtered." Sean gritted his teeth, his muscles burning with fatigue. He knew he couldn't match Kazrak's raw strength, but he had to find a way to end this, and fast. His eyes darted around the room, searching for something, anything he could use to his advantage. Then he saw it, a jagged piece of metal torn loose from the console during the battle. With a desperate lunge, Sean snatched up the makeshift weapon, swinging it with all his might at Kazrak's head. The cyborg warrior tried to dodge, but he was a fraction too slow. The metal shard caught him across the face, tearing through flesh and circuitry alike. Kazrak staggered back, his hand clutching at his ruined face. Sparks flew from the gash and a viscous black fluid leaked from the wound. Sean pressed his advantage, raining down blow after blow on the wounded cyborg. Kazrak fought back with the fury of a cornered animal, but his movements were sluggish, his reactions slowed by the damage to his systems. With a final mighty swing, Sean brought the metal shard down on Kazrak's skull. There was a sickening crunch, and the cyborg crumpled to the ground, his limbs twitching spasmodically. Sean stood over his fallen foe, his chest heaving with exertion. But there was no time to rest. The console behind him exploded in a shower of sparks, the damage from the battle finally taking its toll. Chen rushed over, his face pale. "The console's fried," he said, his voice tight with tension. "We can't deactivate the shield from here." Sean's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then it hit him, the shield generator itself. If they could get to it, they could shut it down manually. But the generator was deep within the bioweapon facility, protected by legions of Jem'Hadar warriors, and who knew what other horrors. And with the deadly pathogens stored there, any exposure would be a death sentence. Chen saw the look on Sean's face, and a grim understanding passed between them. "I'll do it," Chen said, his jaw set with determination. "I'll go in, shut down the generator." Sean wanted to argue, to find another way. But he knew there was no choice. Every second they delayed, more people died on the UTF colonies under attack. With a heavy heart, Sean nodded. "Do what you have to do," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "We'll buy you as much time as we can." Chen clasped Sean's hand, a final gesture of friendship and respect. Then he turned and sprinted from the room, heading for the bioweapon facility. Sean gathered the surviving UTF Rangers, their faces grim but determined. Together they fought their way out of the control center, cutting down every Jem'Hadar warrior in their path. As they emerged into the harsh sunlight of Nox Prime, Sean could only hope that Chen would succeed in his mission. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.